Hello everyone and welcome back to a new tutorial. 2 years ago, I made a tutorial to show you how you can play Metal Gear Solid on PC, and in particular upgrade it with great fan patches that allow for an even better immersion and of course gameplay. It has to be said, of course, you should never actually play this version if you just want to play this game casually. I can only highly recommend to not play the PC version and instead go out of your way and get the ISO of the console game and play it on an emulator like DuckStation. For DuckStation, we'll have a separate tutorial how to set that up with all the requirements that you would need to speedrun this. And today we're going to show you how to make the PC version run better and of course how to make this a great speedrun experience as well. So question number one, very simple. How do we get Metal Gear Solid for PC? It's very simple. You can buy it here on GOG.com for 10 euros or your local equivalent. And alternatively, there's a different patch, since we actually refer to Metal Gear Solid PC in its patches. This is the GOG form here, but there's also the Reddit patch, which you can find here. I'm sure you're smart enough to know how to Google, and then you can easily find the Reddit patch as full release. Next, we need this PC launcher. It's called the Metal Gear Solid Integral Launcher done by BMN. And we're going to use the latest version currently, which is 1.36. The links to all of that I will show you here will of course be listed in the video description down below as well. With the game and the patcher, we can already update the game greatly. And later I'll also show you how you can use your controller like a Dualsense or Dualshock 4 or an Xbox controller with a paid program or even a free program. Last but not least as well, there's another tutorial that I made for Metal Gear Solid speedrunning for the PC and emulator version, how to use live split and especially variable viewer. So check that out as well if you want to get started here on how to live split and variable viewer extra stuff out of the game. So check that video out if you want to know how to set up live split, your splits, and of course also how to get extra information out of the game using variable viewer, which is speedrun legitimate. But enough talking, let's get going. So say for example you downloaded the game from GOG, what will you find? If you downloaded the game from GOG, you will have a nice folder here. I renamed it to GOG Vanilla, so I know exactly what I have here. If you have the Reddit version, it will come as this Metal Gear Installer.exe. Just install that where you want, and then you have a separate folder for that. Alright, now that the game has been installed, see never be game over, you can finish it here. And the game already installed here some icons for you. Now, what I only want is really the folder, so everything else I can delete now. And now we have the two game versions here. So why is there a difference between GOG and Reddit? Well, it really comes down to the way some of these patches have been applied. Both of these games are from 2000s, and of course to be played on modern PCs, you need some tools. One of these tools is called DX Wrapper. You don't need to worry about that, but you can also additionally give some more config files on top of that, where different approaches have been done here. So the people that worked on this patch for Reddit had a different approach in how, for example, some light designs should have been done and color grading versus the people over at CD Projekt, where they had specifically the GOG division, of course, where they made the patch here for Metal Gear Solid on PC. One distinct thing when it comes to playing and speedrunning this game is that you want to play in the software mode, so the CPU is rendering the game, not the GPU. This may look worse and actually closer to the console release, but this also will have loads happen way faster. So we're going to go in the settings in just a minute. And the difference here between GOG and Reddit is you can play GOG in windowed mode and software renderer. Reddit can only be played in full screen in software renderer. For some people that is a deal breaker. Say for example you only have one screen and you want to have live split open at the same time. Ideally, you want to have your game run then in windowed mode, which you cannot do with Reddit right now if you want to play in software mode. You can still do it in hardware mode, so the game runs on GPU, but if you want to have the game run on CPU and software mode, GOG is probably your choice. So how do we patch the game now with BMN Launcher? Well, let's get BMN Launcher first. Go here, under Downloads, MGS Launcher. I already have downloaded it here. And with these few files, that's all you need. So we're going to take these actually and put them into the two folders here. So take this, put it into GOG, and then take them again and put them into Reddit as well. Now, we're not going to explicitly show for both versions how to patch them. They're basically identical. I will show the individual differences between Reddit and GOG when they are relevant. But from here on out, you can think of GOG and Reddit as the same thing for the time being. So we're going to open here a version of the game, and this is how it looks like. You have your entire game folder here, you have like demo fonts and so on. And the important part is actually down here. So there's the mgsi.exe, that is the game. And you got mgsvr.exe. These are the special missions in Europe or virtual missions in international waters. And what we want actually is the MGSI launcher. Now, wherever you install this game, I would recommend to actually use the launcher as a starting point when starting the game. So we're going to right click this here and create a shortcut. And just put the shortcut here on desktop, for example. Now, from here on, you don't necessarily need to do anything with the game files anymore. So we're going to close this folder. I'm going to put this underneath here so I know this is for the GOG vanilla version. You can rename the shortcut if you want. Doesn't matter. What I want to do is, though, I go to Properties, and I'm going to change one setting here. Under Compatibility, I want to have this run as administrator. So the game and this launcher can actually make the changes it needs to do, so we can actually have the full functionality working. On first launching, the launcher is going to ask you if it's allowed to use the internet. This is used so the launcher can actually update itself to later versions, and then can also automatically load new patches that are coming, for example, in version 1.4. It works like this. We say yes to allow to internet connection, and you're being greeted with this window. Now in this window, there are a few things that you want to do. So first off, we have on the left here process. Normally, Metal Gear Solid on PC runs on a single core. It's a 2000s game, dual core CPUs weren't really a thing back then. In modern days, of course, we have plenty of CPUs. In my case, I have 16, for example. And you want to give the game a few more than just one CPU cores. You could just click the first one, hold down the shift button, and for example, click 1, 2, 3. So you have 4 selected. You can find a full list of examples based on CPUs and how many cores you should select so the game runs stable. The issue if you are only running on one core is that the game will crash if you want to skip plenty of cutscenes back to back. For casual play, that may not be a problem, but especially for speedrunners that want to go fast and skip all the cutscenes, of course, this leads to problems. So we have to give the game on PC more cores to work with. You can find the list of CPUs and their cores on the Metal Gear Speedrunners wiki page for Metal Gear Solid 1 and in the FAQ section. And there, under the Speedrun Mechanics for PC, there will be a list here. So here, the game crashes when I hold X to skip cutscenes, and if I do the Tower A roof cutscene skip, what do I do? So here are a few example CPUs, and here are the cores you want to select. Some just have 1 and 2, some have 1 through 6, and some of them have only 4. So in my example, for example, I used 4 cores, but your CPU might vary, so be careful. And also remind me to update this list and poll other people what their CPUs they have. We can update the list. Anyway, the link is in the video description below, so you can check it out yourself. In my case here, I selected core 0, 1, 2, and 3. That's basically everything we need to do right now. I'm going to save the config for the launcher. So when I close it and open it again, it will have core 1, 2, 3, and 0, of course, selected again. Always save config for launcher. We also have a save game manager here, and we have a patch installer. So installing the patches, that's the next step we want to do. I'm going to click this button here, and we see, required 4 patches. We have to make a backup. We have to make actually a download so you happen. So let's start from the top. First off, we want to make a backup of the main game and the VR missions. Then we also need to make a backup of the ddraw.dll. Soon as everything's green, you're good to go. Now, I already downloaded the music pack. The music pack is basically a patch where in the PC version, the developer sadly did not have access to the original music files, so they had to basically download them from the internet. And some of the music sadly doesn't loop correctly. One of the many patches that we have here, as you can see 12 in total, is also a music patch fix. So we have actually selected and updated the music for the PC version so it actually loops correctly. And that's what you can download here. I already have that downloaded, so I don't need to do that again. And then you can unpack the new music to MDX, and now it's up to date. And here comes now the important part. Apply patches to game files. Existing patch status is out of date, because it's brand new, of course. And then select the patches on these that we have here. Now, there's a bunch of patches here. I'm going to explain a few of them. The most relevant one, of course, is the music patch that you want to have. The weapon and cheat hotkeys together patch is a very simple one. So when you play on very easy for speedruns, we're allowed to use the weapon hotkeys, but also the cheat keys. The problem is if you enable the cheats, which I'll show you in just a second, the weapon hotkeys will be deactivated. So you cannot press one of the 10 number buttons that will relate to weapon, and you can automatically equip that weapon if you want to have cheats active. With this patch, this has been fixed. You can now use both the F7 key, for example, to use the area reload, and you can still use the number keys to equip any weapon you want. Numpad weapon hotkeys, self-explanatory. As you hover here, you can also see an explanation. Not only do the top row numbers now allow for selecting the weapon, also the numpad number keys will now work to select any weapon. Here are the brand new things that we've been talking about. So native diagonal D-pad controls is where sometimes in the older versions, if you had your D-pad mapped to, of course, the 4 cardinal directions, sometimes you would go in odd directions, so the game would falsely interpret them. This patch fixes that, so you can use your D-pad actually, so it works. The old workaround in the old version of the video as well was to map your D-pad to analog stick, and then this would not happen anymore. Thankfully, with this new patch, we can actually have a one-to-one mapping from the D-pad to the game. Next up is native analog controls, the thing that just was decided as being allowed, and it's very simple to set up. With this patch active, you set still your D-pad to the 4 directions in the game menu, but additionally now, your left stick will actually work as intended as a full analog input method. So you don't only have up, down, left, and right and those combinations, giving you 8-way movement. With the left D-pad now, you additionally will have all minor degrees of movement in between, so full 360-degree movement scheme. A few more patches are disable mouse input, so the game would normally capture the mouse. If you enable this patch, you can move your mouse freely during gameplay. Disable software mode mouse capture is the same thing. The more controller options in the UI text is very useful. It gives you actually way more insight what you're actually binding there. Select gamepad and extra options is something that you can do. And gamepad and background is if you're not having the game in focus, for example, you click on Discord, you can still play the game with the controller. Audio in the background, same thing. If you're not clicking on the game in focus, but are, for example, just clicking over to Discord, the audio will still play in the background. And last but not least, one of the more important things again, fix blank save bug. This is a bug where some saves just appear to not be working anymore, and with this we'll fix it. Very simple. So we're going to apply all of these 12 patches at once, just have them select here, and just click the patch button. And as you can see, it takes just a few seconds and all of these patches have been applied to the MGSI and MGS VR patch. Now we're done with patching the game and we can actually launch it for the first time. Although, wait, we need a control method here. So before we actually launch the game, we want to quickly set up our controllers so they're fully working and we can map them in the game as well. Here I have DS4Windows by Dualshock 7. As you've seen, I connected my Dualsense currently via USB. And it's not running in exclusive mode, which is fine. I already made a profile here, but let's start again brand new. I'm going to make a new profile, and I will use a preset option. So yes, go to Gamepad, and then Xbox 360. Fine. And this will basically map the sole Dualshock 4 or Dualsense. Both are working with this program. So it's basically emulating an Xbox 360 program. Let's save it as Xbox 360, for example. And then you're good to go. Now, you want to check your Windows settings quickly. Open the Windows and tap USB. You want to open up Setup USB Game Controllers. Here, as you can see, we have 2 controllers. We have a controller, Xbox 360 for Windows, and we have a wireless controller. Make sure that at least this controller is set under Advanced Settings as the preferred device. Windows does hand out controllers, basically like digitally, to games and say, hey, we have multiple controllers connected. This is controller number 1, this is controller number 2, and so on. You have to make sure that Xbox 360 is the first controller that gets sent towards Metal Gear Solid PC. Alternatively, you can also use a different program to hide this controller entirely from Windows, so it can't even tell the program that there's another controller. and it only sees the Xbox controller that we have emulated with DS4Windows. For that, I can highly recommend this tutorial that I've shown here. It's also, of course, linked in the video description down below. You can use a program called HidHide, which you can get here. This is also linked in the description down below. Follow this tutorial to install the program and then configure it. And in that configuration, you can basically tell, hey, this Sony Computer Entertainment wireless controller, for example, should not be seen. In my example, as you can see here, I have that program already installed. If I go under devices, I've hidden already plenty of these controllers because I don't want any other program to see them. And you can see here the Sony Interactive Entertainment wireless controller, meaning my Dualsense that I have here, is being seen. If I check it here, it's now locked and will be hidden. And as we can see here, for Windows, under this game controller window, this wireless controller has moved away. It can be that you need to do this, it can be that you don't have to do this. So this is really situation dependent. If you see that Metal Gear Solid PC behaves weirdly, it is very most likely that a different keyboard, sometimes even a foot pedal that speedrunners use, for example, or of course, a controller has multiple inputs here. And with a program like HidHide, which is for free, of course, you can hide all of these controls that you don't want to have up here and only have the emulated one that you've set up here in DS4Windows appear for Windows. But what if you have an Xbox 360 controller already or an Xbox One controller? Well, you could technically use that already. And because it's already native to the Windows system, you don't need to change much. However, there's one thing I need to show you. In Metal Gear Solid PC, you need to, of course, fight also Mantis, the boss fight. At least for the all bosses category. In any percent, we actually skip that fight. But if you want to fight Mantis in Metal Gear Solid PC, you need to use the keyboard as a weapon key. Why is that? Well, let me start from scratch here. So this is if you open AntiMicroX. AntiMicroX is a program that can rebind any controller to keyboard or even mouse inputs. It's very useful and it's for free, but it does come with some limitations. For the practical purpose here of playing Metal Gear Solid on PC, there's one example I need to show you. What we want is when we press the square button or the X button on an Xbox controller, you can see here, that we actually don't send the X button input, but a keyboard input. And the input that I want to send is actually left control here. Click that and close. And now if I press X, you can see it actually still shows here in the program as X, but for Windows now, it will actually interfere and give Windows the left control key. And this is the only button that we need in order to have Mantis think, oh, we're playing on keyboard. It's only about the attack key. With this simple rewind from the X button on Xbox or the square button on PlayStation controller to the left control key on the keyboard, we can now play the game fully. I will later show you in this video also an advanced setup where you use your sticks in order to bind them to weapon keys, but especially in the beginning that might not be necessary for you. This is probably a more advanced thing. Regardless, this will be in a later chapter of this video, and check out the timestamps in order to find that section if you want to see it right now. Alternatively, if you don't want to use AntiMicro, reWASD also can help you. So if I open this program here, you can see I already have different setups here. One of them is, for example, here, easy analog. This is the setup that I personally use. The D-pad is, of course, bound to the D-pad. The A button, in my case, is left shift. And the X button is left control, as you can see here. It's a little bit more advanced. Left shift basically is just snakes standing up or crawling. And sometimes there's combinations where it's advantageous to have both of these keys bound together, especially if you want to run and gun. The left stick, of course, is the left stick. And when I press in the stick, I have set it to 5 for the stinger, which is useful for the speedrun sometimes. But with reWASD, what really matters only is the X button. That, of course, has to be changed to left control if you want to play this game in all bosses. So Mantis doesn't actually see your inputs and you can actually read them. And just to show you again, now that I have closed everything and disconnected my Xbox controller and reconnected my Dualsense, and I've also hidden the Dualsense from Windows, this EX tile here actually changed to the key, means it has HidHide access. HidHide can connect to DS4Windows and tell the program actually, yes, there is a Dualsense, do whatever you want and send Windows a virtual gamepad. And so for the example that I just shown you with the Xbox button here, we want to do the same. In DS4Windows, go to Profiles and change it. Or when you make a new profile, you automatically get here. Click the square button here. And now it opens up a new menu where you can select what key you want it to have pressed. We're going to use the left control here. And if we hover our mouse over, we can see that square is now bound to left control. You can save and apply that. Now we're good to go. And we can actually go into Metal Gear Solid PC and set up the first few settings we need to set up. Once again, advanced gamepad setups will be shown later. So once again, I'm going to open up here my MGS Launcher. Once again, we have set the course here 0 through 3, as we've saved it in the config for launcher. And now we want to launch the game first time. The game now launches in full screen mode and in the hardware settings, which means that the game is rendered via your GPU. And as you can see, it looks sort of alright. You can already use your gamepad here, for example. I can use my left stick here to go up and down the menus, but I will recommend you do the initial setup with your keyboard. Use your arrow keys on your keyboard to go on the options and press enter. Under video and sound options, you want to go in here, go all the way down and go to advanced. And here is the rendering device that we need to change in order to be fast for speedruns. You can, of course, play on your so-called primary display driver, which is your GPU. And of course, you can increase the resolution if you want, but it has to be said once again, during your speedrun, you will lose a couple of seconds if you will use this section, because during room transitions, there's a fade out, and that fade out will cost you time. That fade out doesn't happen if you set your rendering device to software. This sadly limits the game to be 640 by 480, but I will show you how you can increase the scale again, especially if you want to play in window mode, the GOG port. If you play on the Reddit port, of course, then it will always be full screen, so the resolution doesn't matter because it will be as big as your screen is. Just go all the way down. The water ninja effect, by the way, you can leave on, you can turn off. It doesn't really change the effect. What is important in this display options is that you set your software render. And you have to do this in the game first time, because the launcher does have option to force it in, but I think it's easier to just do it manually once and then do a backup of the game settings. But in any case, go to options, advanced display options, and set it to software. You want to confirm. Without a restart, it won't affect the changes here that we just made, and you have to do it again. So you have to reset now. Now that we're in software mode, you can see that the game looks more crunchy. Well, that is now because we're actually running on a lower resolution, and also there's less blurring happening in the background. I personally think, especially here in the menu, the fonts are way more clearer. And we can double confirm, going to the options, video sound. It is actually on software mode now. What we're going to do now is go down one, go to control options, and enter again. And here you see there's lots of things already pre-configured. Here's a few things that I personally use. And you have to remember, for weapon and grab, we're going to use left control. Because my PC is set to German here, it actually uses German phrasing. So STRG is control, actually. And layer is the spacebar, and Umschalt is shift. Sorry for the confusion. I said you don't know how to change the language for this here. But just stay with me here and we get through this. So, with everything set up as described earlier in the previous settings, we're going to go to first person view. You're going to press enter, and you want to press the triangle button. Now, weapon and grab, we're actually not going to use the native gamepad button. So we can actually empty it. How do we empty it? As you've seen, when I pressed triangle here, the crouch and cancel button actually got taken away, and button 3 was now set to first person view. So we can actually use this to empty out button bindings here that we don't use because we use keyboard inputs, for example. So go to weapon and grab, press triangle again. Now it's set here. Go back to first person view and press triangle again. And now weapon and grab is empty. Punch and confirm, of course, is your circle. And crouch and cancel is your X button. If you have set, like me, for example, your X to the left shift button, then you can also delete it by just using triangle here and go back to first person view, use triangle here. And then, of course, the weapon and grab will be used for left control, and the crouch and cancel would be used for the left shift key. In this instance, though, I did not bind the X on PlayStation controller to a keyboard bind, so we're going to use the native button here. Next up, you're going to go through your menus for the weapons. So item equip L1, 1 button, item menu L2, press the L2 button, weapon equip R1, press the R1 button, and weapon menu, press the R2 button. course, the equivalent to the Xbox Gamepad apply here as well. Codec, of course, will be then your left action button or option button. And here comes the important part. In order for analog to work, you are not setting in actually the controls for your stick. You're not going to use x-axis up or left. You want to actually input here your D-pad. So your D-pad right, so your D-pad left, your D-pad right, your D-pad up, and your D-pad down. Your left stick will automatically be read out from this new patch and will be applied. In the bindings here, you need to set your D-pad. For the analog stick, you actually don't need to bind anything. And when you soft pause, of course, you can use the option key to the right. After you set your controller, you want to go out and go exit. And now you want to go in and make your first backup of the game settings. If you make a game settings backup, basically everything that we just said will be remembered for the next start. We press backup. And I suggest to also set the checkbox here so you restore your backup on every. So every time when you click launch game here, it will remember what you just did in the settings. We'll always set it to what you preferred. So if you launch it again now, after the initial first relaunch, yep, the game is still in software mode, as we can see here from the textures, but also by confirming ourselves the options. And also in the control options, every binding that we just did is completely remembered. And now, just to try it out, we go to new game, and I can confirm that we actually have analog movement as well. Press escape to close the codec here, and use your D-pad to move around. You can see here left, right is working, up and down is working. And you can use your stick as well. We never bound actually the stick. But because Windows basically tells MGS, hey, there's a controller and that controller has also a left stick, these inputs are actually understood from the game with this new patch. Just to confirm, we have actually 360-degree movement. I'm going to go quickly up here. And we can see here, yep, we are not limited at all. We have very smooth lines that we can take and very nice curves. In comparison, if you go with the D-pad, you always have very hard turns like this, because you can only turn in like 45-degree angles. But make sure, of course, you also use your menus. Give it a try here. And there you go. If you were playing on Reddit, this would be everything you need to do. If you play on GOG, you can additionally do one more extra thing. As I said, the Reddit patch doesn't support software mode and playing in Windows mode. But the GOG port actually does allow for that. And as you can see here, the launcher is open in GOG, and it knows that because it gives me the open GOG video config button here. So let's use that and actually go in here. And in this is actually for a DX wrapper, DirectX. And you can change these modes here to different resolutions. So what I did is already here, I gave my system a more custom resolution here. So I can actually select a 4x3 window that is actually filling the entire height of the screen and a width of 1440 pixels. How to set it up is very simple. I went to the video control panel here, went to change resolution, and went to customize. And on a customize, you can create a custom resolution if you want. Type in here 1440 and 1080, and your refresh rate can be anything 60, as high as your monitor really goes. You go to test. That side already exists in my case. In your case, it will be testing, and then you can accept that, and then you can move on. You may have to restart the launcher for this to show up here if you didn't have it beforehand. I'm going to use here 1440 by 1080 and 240 Hertz. The game runs at 30 anyway, so don't worry about that. And then presentation here, that's the important part. You can set this to windowed. Save this and exit. And press the backup button again to set up our changes here. So with these two changes already done, I quickly changed my desktop background to be different from black. You can see here, if I launch the game, now the game is actually windowed. It does have still these black border on the right and this black border at the bottom, which is something that's part of the Metal Gear Solid PC game, sadly. You cannot get rid of this by moving around the world. But as you can see here, the game is windowed now, and the background you can still see. Now, if you have only one monitor, there's a really cool trick I want to show you quickly, which is you can actually move this window around. Close the game, and then go into the extra options here. You can say no change, that is fine, but position, if you set the position here and put it, for example, at 450, press back up again and then launch game. You can see first the game launched, but now it moved to the right. And you see, you can even go further to the right, but on the left now there's a really big gap. This left gap I actually use so I can put in my live split. As you can see here, this is all my main monitor. And just by having this game now run in windowed mode and shifted over to the right by 450 pixels on a 1920 wide pixel monitor, I have enough space on the left to easily see my live split here. And now you can fully play the game, no problem. You can even see the live split starts. Once again, there's a tutorial how to enable live split, set it up like I have. So I have, for example, at the bottom, the extra info, how much time is left until the elevator comes down, and more useful information that you can get from live split. And as you can see here, we can fully play now and enjoy the game. That is basically everything you need to do, and plus some extra recommendations just to play the game on PC, and especially having these nice new patches like having analog movement now allowed for the Speedrun.com leaderboard for Metal Gear Solid 1. Additionally, you also know now how to make this game in windowed for the GOG port and to move it over even on the screen, so you have enough space to the side, for example, use it for your Twitch live chat or for your live split. And once again, it has to be said, sadly, the Reddit version, as of right now, you cannot put in windowed mode and you can't move it around like you can do the GOG port. For Reddit, you will always have to use it in full screen and have to have, for example, your live split on a second monitor, or it will be just hidden in the background. Before I leave you, there's one more extra thing that I want to show you, and these are specific bindings. So you can use, for example, your controller and the sticks, so they actually function as weapon hotkeys. So from here, I have a few presets, which you can get from Speedrun.com's resource page as well. Say, for example, the All Bosses one. And here in DS4Windows, you can see when I go on my stick here, it's actually rebound. We go there to it here. So RS is my right stick. If right stick goes up, it's bound to D1. What is D1? It's very simple. It is this digit 1 on the keyboard. It's not the weapon hotkeys that we can also now additionally use on the numpad, but it's just this one here. If you have the patch installed, basically this one and this one for the purpose of equipping a weapon is the same. In case you don't know, in Metal Gear Solid PC, pressing the numbers 1 through 0 here, they all equate to a specific weapon in your inventory, and you can immediately equip them by pressing that number button. You don't need to menu towards them anymore, which is very important for Metal Gear Solid PC speedrunning, as it eliminates basically the need to shuffle around in the menu, and you can immediately equip the weapon that you want. It's also used for different speedrun tricks. So that's why, for example, my right stick is set to different numbers. Right stick up is, for example, D1, and just pressing in the right stick is 0, pressing the left stick is 5, that's, for example, the stinger, and so on. Now, of course, that we have analog movement, this whole stick will basically be used for movement, so we would need to bind them again to regular sticks. Left axis up, down, left axis left, and left axis right. Pressing the stick can still be set, of course, to a number hotkey, because that's not used right now, but we definitely need to have this active here. Something that definitely is important for your right stick here is actually your dead zone. As you can see here, LS and RS in DS4Windows, I've set the dead zone here to 95%. That means if I move the stick up to 95% in, it doesn't react. Only after the 95%, so basically when I reach this end of the stick movement, only then it actually reacts and presses the button that I told you to be pressed. Very useful for if you want to quickly change your weapon on the fly and don't move your hand away from the gamepad to the keyboard, for example. In certain situations, that can be faster and more comfortable as well. How does this look for reWASD? I needed a little bit of time to find it. But if you're not using DS4Windows, and if you're not using a Dualshock or Dualsense anyway, it looks like this. So this is my former setting that I used for playing Metal Gear Solid PC, all bosses. And as you can see, each of these sticks is corresponding to a number and plus their direction. The problem here is it took me a little while to find how to change the dead zone, so I want to show you that quickly. And what's really cool about reWASD is you can also eliminate the in-betweeners. So say, for example, you go top right, then the stick would actually send 2 inputs. So in this case, it would send 1 and 9 together here. But with reWASD, you can actually set it so it actually has a very thin line where it literally only sets either 1 or either 9. So let me show you how that setup looks like here in reWASD. Once again, this is a paid program, but I personally think it's very useful. So you want to we press any of the 4 directions of the stick here, so you can get this advanced dialog. In this advanced dialog, you see I already changed a few settings. So let me quickly reset it how it used to be. This is how your usual stick looks like. This is currently the right stick. The left stick will look the same. As we can see here, if you go in the up direction, it will press only the up direction. Press the right direction, it will only press the right direction. And if you go in the 45-degree angle between these two, the dark spot, this is where it would send both directions, so right and top together to make top right. Now you can set the stick actually here, so it only sends up or right. For that, we just need to change the range. So we're going to drag the vertical axis range all the way here. So the entire 90 degrees here, it's only up, and the entire 90 degrees here, it only goes down. You can do the same thing for the horizontal axis. That way, now it's barely visible. I'm going to drag it a little bit so you can see it on video. Right? If you go all the way to the max, there's literally no line in between anymore where the stick can send up and right together. You can see here, pulling it all the way to the right. And now if I go right, if I go up, or if I even just go slightly to the right, it will still only send up the top direction. And since we bind these directions to numbers, this is very important to us. Because we actually specifically want to just press one single button here. And this setup allows us to actually eliminate any of the in-between values, which would maybe ruin our speedrun. Another thing is that currently the stick is very sensitive. Right now, this dark spot here represents as soon as the stick begins to react. And we want to set this value actually almost to the end. So you really have to press the stick all the way up. Because it can still happen that if you go only slightly to the right, you just hit the angle where it hits the top. So my recommendation as well for the stick is to add the dead zone value, just as we did it with DS4Windows. Before that, we go over here to the zone shape. And here are the different axes. It's currently a very direct line. And what we can do is it's very simple. We can drag this all the way to the right, all the way to the right. And this, we can drag almost like this. As you can see here, now there's only the outer edge really yellow. I'm doing this by eye here. You can also set the value manually. So it's here at 31,000 roughly. And now, as we've seen here, I can go back. And I would set, for example, this here to number 1, this to key number 2, this to key number 3, this to key number 4. And if I apply that setting here, as we can see here, on the left, I have the input viewer. So you can see I go up and I go slightly to the right, and then it immediately changes to the right one. I go further through the circle, start beginning curving my stick down, and now it goes all the way to 2. So you can see, you can very distinctively only press a single direction here. There's no in-between directions anymore, which is really useful for the speedrun of Metal Gear Solid PC. And additionally also, I need to move the stick very far away so I can actually see that it reacts, which is definitely helpful because it takes away the sensitivity here. There's just a little adjustment that I personally found out very useful. I can click any of the 4 directions, go to advanced, drag vertical and horizontal axis all the way to the right, then change the zone shape here so there's only just the gray parts here and only the outer edges are actually reacting here. Same thing you can also do for the left stick if you want, though if you start running on analog, of course, you need at least the 4 directions of the left stick here so they can actually be used for movement. Same with the pad. Basically, running analog removes a little bit. Previously, runners like myself, for example, decided to have both sticks mapped to weapon hotkeys, but now with the analog patch, we might change that as well. At least I personally will. However, I found it important to show that specific aspect of rebinding the controls as well, because it can be advantageous, and especially eliminating the in-betweeners here is very useful for me. As you can see here, once again, this is my modern layout. Left stick, the directions are in here. Pressing in stick still gives me number 5 for the stingers. And the right stick is now limited to, for example, 3 is the grenades, 9 is the chaffs, left is the stun grenades, and center is 0 for the PSG one. And then bottom we have 4, which is, for example, the Nikita. Everything else, I basically need to lift my hand away from the gamepad and put it on the keyboard to press the corresponding number that I want to press. Of course, with reWASD, you could also make shift layers, so you press a number combination and then this layout changes, but that's a more advanced thing for another day. Last but not least, of course, I also want to show you the free program AntiMicroX if you're not using DS4Windows with a Dualshock or Dualsense controller. So if you're using, for example, an Xbox 360 controller or an Xbox One or an Xbox Series controller, you can do the same rebindings here as well. As you can see here, the stick is also here. and reacting to inputs. And we could technically also say, if we go up, for example, we press 9. If you go right, we press 8. If you go left, we press 3. If you go down, we press 4. But as you can see here, there's also the same options that we've already seen with reWASD. So there is no need actually to pay for the program. AntiMicro offers the same options. So we can set the dead zone here also to almost maximum. Here, it's only the outer edges, but I put it back now for a moment because we want to change these values as well. So there's square stick in the middle here, which sets it more to a square dialect. But what actually is interesting for us here is diagonal range. We want to change the diagonal range to the same thing here. So you can either have it here, so it's only the in-betweeners, or you set it all the way to the bottom, so it's only up, right, down, the left, and no in-betweeners. Now if you increase the dead zone like this, okay, let's go. And we want to save this, for example, as MGS PC. And now I can move my stick, and only if I'm almost at the edge, then it reacts. Moving very slowly down, and only it reacts to 4. And if I circle my stick around, you can see there's no in-betweeners. There's only the main buttons. So just like with reWASD, the same options can be done here for free with AntiMicroX. I will provide in the speedrun.com resources page also profiles like this that are just created here, so you can easily download it and use it yourself. All right, and that has been everything. This is basically the modern way how to speedrun Metal Gear Solid PC in 2023. I hope you like it, and remember, of course, to follow the links in the description down below. Shoutouts to BMN, who continuously supports making fan patches and, of course, great additions to the game as well, as also making, of course, the live split tools and other features that we use in general for Metal Gear speedrunning. My name is Hostis. Thank you everyone for watching. Happy running, and I see you on the leaderboard.